Call to order, councillors. It is 9 o'clock, so we will begin. Before we do begin, though, if everyone could please check their mobile phones and devices and turn them to silent. Thank you. So good morning and welcome. Good morning to the community members, visitors, guests, and to our local media rep from the Argus who's here today for our April council meeting. Again, it is good to see so many community members attending our council meeting. And many of you have been here before and understand that this is an open meeting of council for the public to observe council in its decision-making process. Speakers are identified by the chair to speak. Silence is requested during public forum and presentation items and whilst council is in session. For any visitors attending for the first time, no one in this room has parliamentary privilege. Any debate, remarks or gallery interaction need to keep this in mind. And as our code of meeting practice includes live streaming, I need to inform all present that your attendance at this meeting is taken as consent to the possibility that your image and or voice may be recorded and broadcast to the public via our live stream. I've also been reminded that please be aware, according to Council's Code of Meeting Practice, in regard to any other audio or visual recording of the meetings, prior permission must be sought before the meeting, and the decision to allow must be a unanimous decision of Council or any Council committee. For people in the gallery to follow the agenda and the recommendations, there's 2 screens for the recommendations to be displayed. And everyone is welcome to join us for morning tea, which usually takes place at approximately 10:30. We have 3 public forum speakers this morning. One is Martin Davies, who will be speaking on item 13.5, Subdivision, Crescent Head. He'll be speaking for. Arthur Bain on item 15.3, Climate Change, and he will also be speaking for. And Adam Ulrick, item 15.1, AIAC Agreement, speaking for. Councillors, a reminder again that questions must be on the agenda item being discussed only, direct, succinct and without argument and debate. Any answer given to a question is not open for argument or debate. And we welcome councillors, General Manager, Director Fish, who I believe it's your 1-year anniversary today. So you've done an awful lot in that 1 year, Director Fish, so thank you. Acting Director Corporate and Commercial, Gayleen Burley, so welcome today. And I also welcome any of the staff that are in chambers this morning. We will begin with item number 1, which is our opening prayer. Dear Lord, help us in our deliberation today so that our decisions will be for the greater good for the whole of the Kempsey Shire. Amen. And we acknowledge the traditional owners of the land. Council acknowledges that this meeting is being held on the traditional land of the Dunghutti people. Apologies, we have 2 apologies today. Bruce Morris and Councillor Anna Shields. Do I have a mover to accept those? Thank you. Moved by Councillor Saul, seconded by Councillor McGinn. All in favour of accepting those? Aye. That's been carried. Any declaration of interest? I have Councillor Horval.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to declare a non-significant, non-pecuniary interest in item 15.3, I think it is, the airport negotiations, in that I live within the 3 nautical miles of the flight training area of Kempsey Airport.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Patterson.
Yeah, I declare non-pecuniary, non-significant interest in item 15.3, as I also live in that area and I do like aeroplanes.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other declarations of interest?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Just one correction, it's actually 15.1 for both of those.
Thank you, Councillor.
And I've got a declaration of interest in relation to item 20.2, which is the General Manager's Interim Performance Agreement.
Thank you, General Manager. Number 5, assessment of items listed for confidential consideration. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Saul. Thank you, Councillor Williams. All in favour of leaving the assessment of items? That's been carried. Confirmation of minutes, item number 6. Do I have a mover? Thank you, You moving it? Do I have a seconder? Thank you. Move Councillor Hall, seconded Councillor McGinn. All in favour of the minutes as they are recorded. Thank you, councillors. That's been carried. We have no citizenship ceremonies this morning. We will begin our public forum speakers. Just before I call public forum speakers, please keep your remarks, all speakers must keep their remarks to the topic and presentation you have agreed to, factual and without any personal innuendo, insult or disrespect to any person in this room. As within the community, there is no place for harassment or intimidation in this chamber. If there is a deviation from this and a point of order is called and upheld by the chair, you'll be requested to return to your seat. The first person that we're calling this morning for public forum is Martin Davies. He will be speaking on item 13.5, the subdivision at Crescent Head. So if you come forward, please, Mr. Davies. You have 5 minutes to deliver your deputation. A bell will sound at 4 minutes. Thank you.
Lady Mayor, councillors, good morning. Thank you for allowing me to speak and address this meeting. I was asked by the family of the late Mrs. Hope to speak to you today about the application. My wife, sorry? My wife is an executor to the will and also a beneficiary. Obviously, I'm here today to support the Planning Department's recommendation that a subdivision would be perfectly okay. And I'm just here to sort of talk to you about things that I see with it. In Stewart Street, which is on the map there is actually 11 blocks in Stewart Street which are below the size of the KLEP of 2013. But I've lived in this area for 45 years, and I quite agree that 500 square metres is a fair size for a block of land if it's on the flat. This land that we're talking about today is on a hillside. As I say, I've lived there for 45 years. Maintaining ground on that hill is very, very difficult, and I have been the only person in the whole of this area that actually mows my own land. It is all done by contract mowers, and as I say, I'm the only person who actually does any work in the garden. It's done by contractors, and I can tell you all that you can come to that area anytime you like and you will never see anyone in a garden, and because everybody there has verandas and that's where they spend their leisure time. I spent my time mowing, as I said. I was talking to my wife the other day. She hasn't been to the back of my land or our land for about 6 months, and we live almost directly behind the land that we're trying to subdivide. If you look at the land, the green area there, you can see there is a mighty lot of land there, and I would say that arguably it's the most open land in the whole of Crescent Head. I mean, I don't know anywhere that's got that open area. Also the way that people have bought, added to, subdivided, it's going to stay open for a long time because there's not the area. One more house could be built on behind John and Jan Hare's house, which is the one with the blue roof, and that would be all that could be done. So it is quite a large area, and I think it's sort of, we could put a house there quite easily. Recently I was asked, which is going off the point a little bit, was what we were going to do with the land. And I've said that whether it's allowed the subdivision or the subdivision is denied, my wife and I will be working very hard in the family to make sure that it is actually sold to a family, not for holiday rental, because I'm afraid that, in my opinion, Crescent Head has lost its heart. I've been here 45 years in the same house, and I'm the only person, or have been for about the last 7 years, the only person in Dalton Guy Street, between Gowing Street and the golf course, who actually lives in my own house. All the rest are holiday rentals or holiday homes. In fact, the whole area you see now with all those houses, and there are a few to the right you can't see, there's 25 houses in that area. 5 of those houses have permanent residents. The rest of the time, it's holiday makers there, and I can assure you, we go from.
You can continue,
Okay,
but you're 5 minutes.
I won't
is
be
up.
much longer. I forgot what I was going to say there. Yes, as I say, we are the only people who have lived there in the last, I can't tell you how many years. We have holiday rental to the west of us. The house on the eastern side of us was sold, I would say, probably 18 months ago to a local couple. And I can honestly tell you now, if it had gone to holiday rental, my wife and I were going to sell, because holiday rental is such a contentious thing for us. And one of the reasons why I've said to you that if the land is subdivided or not, that we'll endeavour to sell it to a family, not to any other interest, because it's right in front of our house. And I mean, it would seem a little bit sort of silly to say we would leave if next door went to holiday rental. So we had put ourselves in exactly the same position. If a holiday rental was put across the road to us, I'm afraid I would leave. And what I would say to everybody here, that I've been in the Macleay Valley for 45 years. It has been wonderful to me. I would hate to leave, but if we sold, I wouldn't be staying. I don't know where I'd go, but I live in that iconic area with magnificent views, and I just could not sell and go and live like in Kempsey, or I would just have to leave the whole area, because I've lived in paradise, as far as I'm concerned, for 45 years, and paradise is nearly lost. Thank you, that's all I have.
Thank you, Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, Martin. I'd like to applaud your what you said about having the house go to a permanent rental. You did right. Nearly 30% of the houses at Crescent Head are now holiday rentals, and it's a serious threat to the soul of the village. So I applaud what you said about that. And if we desperately need more
Question,
permanent rentals.
Councillor.
So my question is, would you expect the council to do something about helping that become a permanent rental, or the state government? Yeah.
I don't know who else could actually do anything about it. I think that obviously it's not the council's fault that Crescent Head has turned out this way, but I think that you as the councillors are the only body could actually change it. To be honest, I would be very happy if the subdivision is granted. I would be even more happy if the council granted the subdivision but said there is a rider, no holiday rental could go onto that property. That way I won't have to argue with the rest of the family because my wife and I just don't want another holiday rental by us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next public forum speaker this morning is Arthur Bain. Arthur, if you'd like to come forward. Thank you. Arthur will be speaking on 15.3, climate emergency. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of motion 15.3 for Kempsey Shire Council to declare a state of climate emergency. To be clear, I'm referring to accelerated climate change driven by global warming. I often hear, the climate's always changing and Australia has always had cycles of droughts and floods. What's the emergency? The Reserve Bank Deputy Governor, Guy Debelle, clarifies this issue. We need to think in terms of trend rather than cycles in the weather. Droughts have generally been regarded, at least economically, as cyclical events that occur every so often. In contrast, climate change is a trend change. The impact of a trend is ongoing, whereas a cycle is temporary. So what are the trends? Droughts of increasing intensity and longevity, longer and more severe fire seasons. In the last 12 months in New South Wales, there have been 2 months with no fires. Fire season started in the middle of winter in 2018, taking a toll on volunteers' mental health and physical health, along with the impacts on communities and local government resources. We can expect a decrease in overall rainfall, but increased rainfall in extreme weather events. 1 in 100-year floods will be more frequent. Rising sea levels are impacting coastal development. Will councils be at risk of future litigation for approving current coastal developments? Accelerated climate change has impacted on destabilising the Middle East. Food shortages have led to conflict. Conflict has led to displaced people. There are currently around 20 million displaced people around the globe. This number will increase. There is an impact on our food and water security. In Kempsey Shire, we are well placed to develop plans for mitigating the effects and preparing to adapt to climate change. Strangely, the Council's response to last month's motion was to consider last month's motion to consider a draft climate change policy was to recommend conducting a workshop into a variety of strategies and develop a suite of policies. No acknowledgement of climate change or sense of urgency. Insurance companies are preparing for accelerated climate change by increasing premiums and reducing their exposure to risk. 446 local government authorities worldwide have declared a climate emergency. In Australia, North America, the UK and Switzerland. Across Australia, federal and state government agencies are preparing plans for climate emergency. Strategies are already being put in place. The National Climate Resilience and Adaptation Strategy, the Office of Environment and Heritage report on understanding and adapting to climate change impacts in New South Wales. Darwin City Council has a climate change action plan. Queensland's Climate Adaptation Strategy. South Australia, Adapting to Climate Change Program. Tasmania, Climate Change Action Plan. Victoria, Climate Change Framework. Western Australia, Climate Change Impacts, Adaptation and Vulnerability Report for policymakers. I implore councillors to show vision and leadership to support motion 15.3. To work with other local councils in a climate emergency workshop this year, to call upon the state and federal governments to declare a climate emergency and back this up with legislated programs and resources to support emergency action. Well-researched and effective strategies have already been identified. All it is lacking is the political will and the resource allocation to make the necessary changes. We are in a climate emergency, and our council has an opportunity to acknowledge that and take action today. Thank you.
Thank you, Arthur Bain. Thank you very much, but I think you need to come back. You have a question.
Right, Madam Mayor? Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Arthur, for your presentation. What I would like to ask is, with your experience as a fire captain, do you see any way of mitigating the ongoing fire risk we have in the Kempsey Council area?
Oh, there's several strategies. I mean, they're already documented and in place in other areas. But one of them would be working with Indigenous communities to develop cultural burning programs and having significantly more hazard reduction burns at the appropriate time of year. For example, I've been the captain of Bellbrook RFS for 20 plus years, and this year there weren't many fires around Bellbrook because we have worked together with landowners, and landowners burnt really well and responsibly over the winter this year.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, Arthur. Arthur, admire your passion. But can I ask you this? If you mentioned the workshop that was put forward at last month's meeting, and I don't know if you're aware that there was a inter-council report 2011.
Councillor Questions.
So I'm just asking, don't you think a workshop that addresses all of the issues you've just mentioned, a workshop that addresses all of that and then comes back with a thorough, everybody's input it would be a better course than us dictating play, as it were?
Well, declaring a climate emergency is not dictating play. As far as I'm concerned, it's saying it as it is. I think the response to last month's draft climate change policy, yes, it outlined all the areas that need to be addressed, but the difference with what's proposed today is that it's looking at working together with other councils, and it has a very clear time frame that it needs to happen by the end of this year. The two issues that I raised with the amendment from last month's council meeting were that it doesn't acknowledge climate change, and it doesn't acknowledge climate change as the overarching problem, and hang on, what was the other issue? Yeah, it doesn't acknowledge climate change, and it's a suite of policies. All of those policies, all of those ideas are what we need to do.
Yes.
However, by declaring climate emergency and working together with other councils that have also done this in New South Wales, you're going to get faster action, and there's also pressure on the government, on the state and federal governments, to start putting some funding into these programs. Because it's fine to talk about what we can do. It's already there. It's already been worked out. We just need to be able to start doing it, and that needs resources.
Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Arthur, for your presentation. I've just got one question. Do you know how many local councils in New South Wales have declared a climate emergency?
Oh, I think it's around 6.
6, okay.
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Arthur, for your passion on this subject. I've just got a couple of questions. I think you should be able to answer them. What percentage of the world's population is Australia?
What percentage of the world's population is Australia?
Well, I'm just trying to understand, because there's a means to my question.
Okay, I'm not sure.
The 0.3 of 1%. What percentage of the world's pollution is created by Australia?
Okay.
I'm just getting to the question.
As a population per head, we are one of the biggest polluters per head of population.
So my question to you is, the workshop that we're proposing is a workshop that we're going to understand our percentage of the world and our difference that we can make without ruining our economy for our ratepayers.
Can I,
Point of order, Madam Mayor. Can we have a question, please?
Question?
can I just
That
speak
was
to
the
that
question.
for a moment?
Don't you think that that's what our workshop should be about?
No, I think it should be about mitigating the impacts in our local area and preparing the adaptation which is going to be needed because it's coming. Can I speak further to that?
You got.
No. Okay.
We're going off course. I'm
Yep.
sorry. And I did say at the beginning, councillors, you need to keep your questions succinct. They need to be on what the topic is, which this motion was about climate emergency. Thank you. Thank you, Arthur.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity.
Our next speaker is Adam Ulrick, if Adam would like to come forward.
Morning everyone, Adam Ulrick from Save Kempsey Airport Action Group, and I like aeroplanes as well, except when there's 30,000 flights a year adversely impacting on our lifestyle and amenity. And I'm here in support of the motion put forward by Councillor Horville. Can you hear me okay? It's evident that council staff have applied a haphazard and grossly inadequate level of scrutiny
Point of
when it comes to
order.
monitoring.
Point of order. You need to make sure that what you say is not innuendo or speculation.
It's not.
It is fact. That is
based
your
on fact.
perspective. I'm sorry, Adam. You need to not do that. So you
Do
continue.
what? Not based it on fact.
You have no proof that the council staff have done anything that is not extraordinary here.
Yeah, I have.
Please keep.
If you let me continue, I've got it here.
I will let you continue, but please be mindful of the respect for the people in the room. Thank you.
I'm very mindful of the respect. So does my time
Continue.
restart? Okay.
No, continue.
When it comes to monitoring and enforcing the conditions of the agreement, Council's actions show that they are not experts when it comes to matters regarding aviation at Kempsey Airport. Any delegated authority currently being applied regarding this agreement should be removed instantly. Section 54 clearly states that this agreement is governed by the laws of the Commonwealth of Australia and New South Wales. This agreement was compiled by a law firm and has been signed by representatives from Council and AIAC. All parties were well aware of the obligations of the agreement. This agreement is forceful in its language and provides no leeway for interpretation or non-compliance. Such terms as all, or fully, or must give, or must comply are noted throughout the agreement. Section 9 states that AIAC may only exercise the option of an extension if notice in writing not less than 3 months prior has occurred. We can only assume this has occurred due to the nature of this motion. Section 9 clearly states AIAC may only exercise the option of an extension if they have in all respects complied with or fully remedied all their obligations under this agreement. The evidence is stated clearly. I had slides here, so I have to please forgive my references to slides. There are a total of 13 separate breaches of this agreement by AIAC, with some of those breaches including flying on a public holiday on an October long weekend and failure to launch the quarterly reports for the entire duration of the agreement to date, as evidenced by the questions put forward by Councillor Horville in the March minutes and the answer provided by the General Manager, which again is on the slide. It is crystal clear that these breaches do not satisfy in any manner the requirement of, quote, in all respects complied, end quote. The request by AIAC to exercise the option for an extension must be rejected outrightly due to non-compliance. Section 10 is solely reliant on all requirements in Section 9 being met, which they haven't. Therefore, any negotiations related to Section 10 cannot proceed. Whether the Council uses the information provided by AIAC or not is irrelevant. It is a requirement of the agreement, stated multiple times in various sections, that AIAC must comply with the conditions of use, and they haven't. Given the repeated and consistent breaches of many terms of this agreement by AIAC, Council must immediately enforce all parts of Section 41B and terminate the agreement. And before you get all upset about terminating the agreement, let me remind you of the comments provided by Mr Melbourne in the February 2019 monthly meeting regarding item 15.3, where he states, quote, development consent will be required to be obtained for any proposal to extend or increase current flight activity associated with AIAC operations at Kempsey Airport, end quote. He goes on to say that, quote, any application to obtain development consent must be accompanied by a statement of environmental effects as outlined in the provisions of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Regulations 2000, end quote. If AIAC want to continue to operate at Kempsey Airport, then make them comply like every other business in this town and make them lodge a DA. AIAC and Council must adhere to this recommendation by Mr Melbourne.
Move an extension, Madam Mayor.
It's lapsed, no second on.
Thank you. They need to lodge a DA. AIAC and Council must adhere to this recommendation by Mr Melbourne. AIAC must adhere to planning regulations and expose their operations to the scrutiny of a full and proper assessment, something which hasn't applied to this secretly developed agreement when it was approved last year and despite two DAs rejecting similar hours of operation. So, councillors, the decisions you need to make are pretty simple. You need to unanimously support this motion to remove any delegated authority regarding matters at Kempsey Airport. You must cease all current and proposed negotiations for an extension of the agreement and instead terminate the agreement for repeated and consistent non-compliance. Thank you.
Do I have any questions? Councillor Hall.
Yes, thank you, Adam. You mentioned that there have been 13 breaches. I don't think you've mentioned all of them. What other breaches of the agreement have there been? Because I've been writing some down. I haven't got all of 13.
We had it in a slide up there, the sections that we thought were relevant, and they're spread throughout the agreement. One is Schedule 2 about flying on public holidays. Not allowed to do that, and they did. The agreement clearly states any a term, they must, if there's breach of a term of the agreement, then the breach clauses in the agreement need to be enacted by council. The other sections are all related to the lack of submission of the quarterly reports around the number of flights conducted by AIAC.
Madam Mayor, could I ask a procedural question? Why haven't we been able to see the slides that Adam has been referencing, please?
General Manager.
Yeah, through Madam Mayor, two reasons. One, the speakers are required to provide them the day before. We were only given it 5 minutes before the meeting started, so that's means we got it. And secondly, the slides contain confidential information that hasn't been released to the public, and we can't show them in public forum.
It's not the information I received regarding the presentation.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay to be lodged today.
Thank you. Any other questions, Councillor?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, again, I thank the General Manager for his response. The Section 54, the obligations of the agreement, you mentioned that. You're saying it's explicit in what must happen. Is that your understanding of it?
Well, it's governed by law of New South Wales and Australia. It's a legal document. And like I said, the language used in the document does not allow for any leeway for interpretation. It says must comply, must give, and they have not given the information required under their obligations that they've signed for on the agreement.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ulrick.
Thank you.
Consideration. Thank you. General Manager will have right of reply.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Just in relation to a couple of points, the points raised by Mr Ulrick in relation to a DA and my comments there, they have nothing actually to do with what is on the business paper today. The business paper today is around an existing agreement with existing clauses and existing rights of option. So there's comments around submitting DAs and that are totally irrelevant. Secondly, there are clauses in the contract that actually state that council may exercise a right or power conferred on it by this agreement at its discretion and separately and concurrently with any other power or right. So it does allow council room to consider what it needs to do in relation to this agreement. So councillors need to be aware of that, and the councillors have had a copy of this agreement provided to them. So when you consider this point, council staff or councillors, whichever party is actually doing the negotiation, it does allow a power to consider things at its discretion.
Thank you, General Manager. Item number 9, consideration of motions for supplementary reports and motions for changes to the order of business. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor. Seconder? Thank you, Councillor Williams. So we will keep the order of business except for item number 10. All agree? Thank you. Consideration of reports relating to public forum matters. Do we have a mover to... Thank you, Councillor Williams. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Patterson. All in favour of dealing with the public forum matters? Yes? Carried. So we'll move to item number 13.5. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Seconder, Councillor Williams. Any debate? No debate.
Madam
I
Mayor.
put the motion. Question?
Madam Mayor, I have an amendment. Madam Mayor, my amendment is that this may be considered a procedural motion, so I seek your guidance here, Madam Mayor, that we defer the consideration of this matter to the May Council, and Council seek and clarify the legal position according to the judgment made on the 8th of October by Chilcot C in the decision of Perrick versus Randwick City Council, and in relation to their KLEP, or it's actually Randwick Local Environment Plan. So
Do I have a seconder? The amendment's lapsed.
you don't hear it, you won't know the law.
So all in favour of the recommendation? All against? It's been carried. Thank you. Moving on to item number... no, we'll take them in order of business. Yeah? Oh, no, we won't actually. In consideration of Mr. Bain, I know he has... Oh, there's probably a lot of people here that have work. But we will take them in order of business. 15.1, which is the AIAC. I'll just wait for councillors to find their page. Thank you, Councillor. I have a mover.
Madam Mayor,
Thank you.
I move the recommendation that Council determines that any extension of the agreement with Australian International Aviation College concerning flight training, conditions of use of Kempsey Airport will not increase flying hours or allow flying on public holidays as allowed in 10.B and Schedule 2 services and hours of use of the agreement.
Do I have a seconder?
Second that. Madam Mayor, I'll speak to that if I may.
Certainly.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. All councillors are aware of the history of this issue, and as is the right of the General Manager under delegated authority, he negotiated the original agreement, and in that agreement he put in that the AIAC could fly on public holidays. And as you would all know, fellow councillors, there was a lot of upset people in our Shire community that was allowed, which was actually going to allow people, the college, to fly on ANZAC Day, on Christmas Day, on all other public holidays. And as we already know, AIAC did not give the due direction to their roster officer and allowed flying on the October long weekend. So I'm saying that we should go back with this agreement to make sure that we don't give away public holidays in the second rendition of this agreement if it is signed up for or extended for another 12 months. And the present flying hours, in my opinion, are sufficient, and without a massive increase of training pilots and training aircraft, the hours that are already allowed are sufficient for AIAC to undertake their training activities. Further down the track, of course, with the noise management plan and fly enabling advice coming into operation, which would possibly happen after this agreement of extension could be signed, we need to put in place the community's expectation that there's no extension of flying hours and there's no flying on public holidays. The argument has been made that there are other airports in the area, like Port Macquarie, that allow longer flying hours and flying on public holidays. That's not our issue. Our issue is Kempsey Airport, and as the owners of that airport, and directions can be given on this negotiation, we should be saying no flying on public holidays, no extension of flying hours, and we will then consider any changes in the future as part of the two items I mentioned, the noise management plan and the fly enabling advice. I would hope my fellow councillors would also be cognisant of the fact that the community that surrounds the airport, which is 3,000 people approximately, and the third largest community in the Kempsey Shire after Kempsey and South West Rocks, that community is not happy with the number of aircraft already. And there are a lot of people that are okay with it, but there's also a lot more people, in my opinion, that are really upset with the process that Council has allowed to happen and have them flying so frequently. So I would like... thank you, Madam Mayor, for that interruption, I guess. Fellow councillors, I ask you to support this very simple and straightforward motion that we keep in operation the hours and the no flying on public holidays, as seems to be the will of our community we represent. Thank you.
Councillor, do I have any further speakers? Before...
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I'd just like to ask a question through the General Manager, if that's all right. I'd just like to know where we're up to with our noise management plan and our fly enabling agreements, the process. What sort of time frame have we got till we get to the end of the process?
Through you, Madam Mayor, the public exhibition period ends on the 1st of May. Council staff are endeavouring to have a final report go to the June 25th council meeting.
So I understand we had a workshop recently. This is all related to that, if that's all right. Did you get a pretty good turnout for that workshop?
We had a number of members of the public turn up in relation to that information session. It was run as a community information session, where people could drop in and ask questions to the airport group, TAG, the consultants, as well as council staff from the airport, as well as council staff representing strategic planning.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've just got one question to the General Manager through you, if I could. With the noise management plan and fly enabling agreement, if it all comes to fruition quickly, and I don't think obviously it'll be enacted overnight or anything like that, it's going to take time, but will it null and void any of these agreements? Will it take precedence over some agreements, i.e. hours of use and things like that?
If we've got a agreement with a operator, then that agreement would still stay in force until any renegotiation may occur with that. The noise management plan is simply a broad framework that council can operate with any development at the airport. So it doesn't actually apply just to one, it actually applies to any operator at the airport.
Yeah, I understand that. Also, could you please clarify the current hours of use for public holidays?
There are nil hours in the current agreement for public holidays, and council staff at the moment, councillors have made it very clear that that's the position they're holding at this time until the noise management plan is actually completed, and council staff are not intending at all to actually vary that in any option that AIAC may exercise. So we're not looking at increasing flying hours or flying on weekends or numbers of flights at all. The only thing we are considering to negotiate with them is if they have them installed and have not had them turned on, we'll be asking them to turn their transponders on in the planes that actually have them, which allows us to track the planes and track their heights as well.
So that pretty much covers what this says. Thank you.
That's exactly right.
So I have a question. In simple terms, can you outline if we accept this notice of motion, what that would do in relation to the organisation and what we currently do now?
It won't change a thing. This is what we're already doing.
Okay.
I'll also add that it is actually an operational matter, and that's why you have staff responsible for these things, but council has made it very clear their position in terms of the hours of operation and the public holidays, as I stated before, that they want the current position held until the noise management plan is completed, so the council can consider it then. So staff clearly are not going to go against that direction from council.
Councillor Baxter, you have something? Any other speakers?
Point of order, Madam Mayor.
Right of reply? Close debate?
I will, but I'll take the point of order first.
Point of order.
Councillor Baxter's comments that this is just getting me an audience, which is what his comment just entailed, is totally out of order.
Councillor Baxter, would you like to apologise?
I was speaking to
Councillor Baxter, would you like to apologise?
I certainly would.
Thank you for apologising. You do apologise to Councillor Hawthorne? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I'd like to speak in response. The idea that this doesn't need to be supported because council staff are already doing it, that's all well and good, but we as council should be showing that we're taking the lead and making it clear to council staff that we don't expect any increase in flying hours or flying on public holidays. And I applaud the General Manager and his team in requesting that transponders be turned on. That would be a great improvement. But I also ask councillors to support this. It just affirms what council staff are already doing or going to do, but we can't be sure that the implementation of this in negotiation is something that AIAC will accept from council staff. But it strengthens the negotiation position of council staff if they can say that council has said there's no increase in hours and no flying on public holidays. It strengthens their position in negotiation. So to strengthen the position, I ask you to support this motion.
Thank you. That was right of reply. I put the motion. All in favour of the motion? All against the motion? The motion's been defeated. Thank you, Councillor. Item number 15.3. There is a recommendation. Councillor Hawthorne.
Thanks for nothing.
Thank you, Councillor Hawthorne. It's item 13.5.
Why don't we resign?
Sorry, it's 15.3. Sorry, what was
15.3,
that?
Madam Mayor, yes.
We'll wait till the gallery's cleared. Thank you, councillors. It's all right, 15.3. Thank you, Councillor Horville.
Madam Mayor, I won't read the whole recommendation, but I'll read the first bit. Recommendation is that Kempsey Shire Council declares that we are in a state of climate emergency that requires urgent action by all levels of government, including by local councils. And it then goes through a whole series of facts in the motion, and then it calls upon the state and federal governments to declare a climate emergency and to back this up with legislated programs. And thank you, iPad. Work with other local councils, we should be doing that. We also are going to be writing letters, and I know it's a challenge, but I'm sure General Manager is able to write a very good letter. I've seen some of his letters, and they are excellent letters.
Thank you, Councillor. There's no debate at this point.
And there's no debate at this moment, so that's what I'm doing. Number 3.3, Madam Mayor, I apologise for going off into debate. And number 4, Council will, and this is the important bit, Council will, following the lead of Bellingen Shire Council, encourage neighbouring local government areas to join Kempsey Shire Council by declaring a climate emergency and developing their own climate emergency plans and advocating to state and federal governments as per point 2. So
do I have a second
move
now?
that motion.
The motion has been, no seconder, lost. Thank you, councillors. Lapsed. Thank you. Back to item number 11, consideration of reports relating to consensus motion. Thank you,
Madam Mayor, I'd
Councillor.
like to remove one, thanks.
Yes, Councillor.
That is the 13.10 ANZAC Day marches.
Thank you,
Please.
Councillor. We'll remove that. Do I have a mover for the rest?
Madam Mayor, I'd also like to remove the legal matters, and which is 20.1 and 20.2, the General Manager's performance review. Gives the opportunity for the General Manager to go early.
Thank you, councillors. So we now have a consensus motion of item number 13.6, 13.7, 13.8, 13.9. I think we've been, thank you, Councillor Saul. No, it's all right. Councillor Saul, thank you, Councillor McGinn.
Madam Mayor, a point of order or procedure. I have a couple of questions on some of those items we're moving in the consensus motion. Do I move ask them after?
We can ask the questions.
Yeah, thank you. Do we need to pass it first, or?
You can, they won't change the recommendation?
No, I just want to ask questions about
Yeah,
that.
no, that's fine. We'll move the recommendation and then you can ask your question.
Madam Mayor, apologies, but is it not better that the questions are asked in case it does raise a point
Okay,
that some of
yes.
us wants to discuss or change or amend? So it's worth hearing the questions, I think.
Thank you. That's what we normally do. We normally, your questions, councillor.
Righto, thank you. I'm going to 13.6, Madam Mayor. The statement of cash and investments, and the motion is the report be noted. But in the investment performance chart for March, which is an attachment, and I can get to that, 13.6.2. I hope I can find it. Yes.
Page 33.
33, thank you, Madam Mayor. The accrued investment income versus the budget, and I'm suggesting this might be to Acting Director Burley. It's going to be a fun number. Three, thank you, Mr. General Manager. The budget said that we would be, at this time in March 2019, we would be having 650,000 income from the investments of our $45 million we have at the moment. And it's actually continuing to outpace that, and it's 250,000 ahead of that. Is that going to continue, or is there going to be an extra cost coming into, or an extra for the end of the year? Will that continue to grow at the way the graph is going, or is there going to be extra losses in the future under the budget?
Through our mayor, I'm not expecting any losses. I'm expecting that growth to continue, and where we need to, we'll be considering in the budget, the March quarterly budget review, whether we actually need to alter the actual budget amount for expected income on our investments.
So we're looking to come up with, say, 400,000 by the end of the year as a on that trend, Mr. General Manager. Would that be the case?
Yeah, probably not 400, maybe around 300. It's going at about 300 a quarter at the moment. We've got another quarter to go, so that could see us exceed the budget by about $250,000.
Okay, thank you very much for that answer, Mr. General Manager. The other one was 13.8. Questions on 13.8, Madam Mayor. Again, challenge to find it.
Development of activity,
yes.
it's on page 38.
Yeah, and I've gone to page 40, Madam Mayor, and this is the development in Prior Circuit, which was approved last month. So my question is, the variation was that it was below the minimum lot size of 500 square metres. On the page 40 it says no submissions received. Now, I presume this development application was advertised by council, would that be correct? Prior to it coming to council, it would have been put out for submissions, because it says no submissions received. Would that be the normal procedure?
I'd certainly make that assumption.
Yes. So that relies on no submissions received when we assume that people have seen the notification in the Macleay Argus and on the council website, but we can't be sure that adjoining property owners have seen that DA to make a submission. Would that be correct?
Through you, Madam Mayor, council staff follow council's policy in terms of the notification, and in this specific one, I don't have the policy in front of me, so I couldn't tell you exactly who is actually notified in relation to it. All I can say is that council considered it at its council meeting and resolved this way, so council staff have followed that resolution.
At the last council meeting, Mr. General Manager, we were told that there was no notification to the neighbours.
If that's the case, then you already knew that information.
No, that wasn't the question, Mr. General Manager. My point was...
You're debating answers, Councillor.
No, I'm not. I'm saying, were the only chance for the people or the neighbours who are seeing this, for them to know about the development application, was to see the notification in the Macleay Argus or on the council website. Is that the case?
The way people had a chance to see this was in line with council's policy.
That only those two areas they would have noticed.
It was in line with council's policy.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager.
Next question, or are we right?
I've got a question, Madam Mayor, if that's all right. Just on item 13.09, the moving or the temporary suspension of the alcohol-free zone at South West Rocks and Livingston Street. My question, Madam Mayor, through you to the General Manager, is do other towns like Port Macquarie, Byron Bay, etc., do they do this type of thing for their events, or do they have an ongoing management plan through their own council staff, or do they have to keep coming back to council for this, to enable to develop these type of events easier?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, different councils will do it differently. Clearly we have a range of alcohol-free zones. In this case, we need to actually bring this back to council to allow this to occur after consultation with the police, etc. It's something we could look at into the future, whether there's an easier way of doing it, but it happens rarely, so putting it up to a council meeting, normally these events have a good lead time, so getting it up to council where required isn't an issue.
Okay, thank you, General.
Have you got one more question, Councillor?
No, Madam Mayor.
All in favour of the recommendation? It's been carried. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I have a procedural motion.
Yes, Councillor.
I move that we pick up from the table the motion that I moved at the February meeting, 15.1, with a purpose to investigate the trigger point that will be required from the state government installing an interchange on Crescent Head Road and the Pacific Motorway. My motion read to investigate the trigger point of that which will require the state government installing an interchange on the Crescent Head Road and the Pacific Motorway.
Councillor,
That Council send a letter to the Premier of New South Wales, the Honour Gladys Berejiklian, MP, member for Willoughby, requesting she have the Roads and Maritime Services investigate the trigger point factors for an interchange to be installed at the junction of Crescent Head Road and the Pacific Motorway. 1. The letter requests a reply outlining the trigger point. 2. Council and the community should be informed of any reply as soon as it is received. 3. When there is a response, Council is to be provided with a separate report with recommendations for determination on any possible further action. I so move.
do I have a seconder? So we've got a seconder? Okay, so we've got a foreshadowed motion, we've got a motion. Do you wish to speak to your motion, Councillor?
Yes, Madam Mayor. I'll make it very short. This is a letter. It's a letter asking the government to investigate. It's a letter. Write a letter. That's all it is. And running for the hills because a letter is going to be written, I think, is not needed with this. You support it. A letter is written, we wait for a response, and we know then what the trigger points are. No one has asked me any questions of what a trigger point is, but I say to you it's a very simple thing. At some point in the future, there will be an interchange installed on Crescent Head Road with the Pacific Motorway. It's a very simple thing. As council, we should know when that's going to happen. The population of Crescent Head have to reach 10,000 people, 5,000 people. Maria River Road developments with the new bitumen road. Will there be an explosion of people going to the new caravan park on on Maria River Road? Will there be a need for this to happen? We need to know, as a council and future planning, as you would already know with future planning, we have a major development being instigated at South West Rocks with 550 new home sites being developed. Council is going to be responsible for the one road in at the moment. We need to plan ahead, and that's what the future planning documents we're dealing with today are dealing with. We need to know if there's going to be a trigger point. As we approach that trigger point, Council can plan future developments and how they will affect the Pacific Motorway. So the interchange, as previously put to you, and I'm pretty sure that you've read all the documentation I've given you, is quite clearly a possibility in relation to where other interchanges have been installed with populations. The population of Moonee Beach, I think, or one of them, at Coffs Harbour has less than Crescent Head, and they have an interchange. So we need to know when the trigger point's going to be occurring. So I ask you to support this in writing a letter to the Premier asking for the trigger point.
Councillor McGinn.
Madam Mayor, thank you. I don't wish to comment on the letter writing. Is it appropriate for me to say why I did actually move the motion on the table, because this is part of the new procedures? I just want to clarify why I did move that procedural motion to lay this matter on the table. The reason I originally moved the procedural motion to lay the matter on the table was actually not to shut the councillor down at the time, and which was in fact the allegation, and I can understand why you might have thought that. But it was because I believe there in fact was more pressing business of council that needed to be dealt with. I did not, and I do not believe that there is any appetite amongst councillors to follow through with this issue. And it's already been to council twice, and it's been voted down twice before in its different iterations. So my motivation at that time to lay this matter on the table was purely to run an efficient meeting. However, I see that the motion appears to be repeating itself over and over again, and I don't wish to give the councillor any more oxygen on this matter.
Thank you. We have a foreshadowed motion. Does anyone else wish to speak, or I will put the motion and then... Oh, we have a right of reply.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Just a quick right of reply, and thank you, Councillor McGinn, for your explanation. You said the motion was brought up twice before and voted down twice before. That's not quite right. The October motion lapsed. The November motion was seconded, so it's only been put to council once in the other iteration, you call it, which was writing a letter to the local member. This letter, of course, is being written to the Premier, and it's not writing to the local member, so it's very different, and it's not writing about having it installed. It's writing to find out the trigger point. When will it happen? So I'm asking you to say, let's write the letter and see what we get back. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, councillors. I'm going to put the motion, remembering that we do have a foreshadowed motion in the background. You have foreshadowed? Okay. I put the motion. All in favour of the motion? The motion's been lost. We go to the foreshadowed motion.
Point of order, Madam Mayor. We need to have people
we
vote
do.
against it. Abstentions. Thank you.
Thank you. All against. The motion has been lost. The foreshadowed motion is, councillor.
That this issue of the interchange for Crescent Head Road on the Pacific Highway does not come back to this term of council.
Do you think you've got that strong enough in any iteration? Do you think you need to add the words any iteration?
I can do with some help. I don't mind.
Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Baxter. I put the oh, do you wish to speak?
No, Madam Mayor. Other than I do think that we have more pressing issues to deal with in our council that we have control of, that we can do something about. We need to deliver certainty for those coming to our shire to invest in business-centric, highway-centric businesses. We cannot be throwing a "we don't know what we're doing" idea out there. Yeah, I'll leave it at Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor.
Move forward.
Councillor Baxter. Councillor Horval.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You might be surprised, but I'm speaking against this. The idea that we will not discuss certain matters because it's annoying to some of you, it appears to be annoying. I don't know why sending a letter is annoying, but I'm speaking against this very simply. We should be able to speak on any matter, and the fact that as councillors we are earning $1,650 a month to do this job, and we are supposedly working strenuously and reading the information that comes to us from staff. We earn our money, and that's so, I guess, but we should be considering all issues in the area, not just what council staff want us to follow through on.
It's got nothing to do with council staff.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I don't believe the point of order is correct.
I'm not going to uphold the point of order this time, councillor, but can you please stick to the recommendation, which is that this not be brought back to council. So you're either going to talk about, yes, it should be brought back to council, or no, it shouldn't. Not the debate of the issue.
The issue is very simply, should we have an open and robust council able to debate any issue. This motion is shutting down an area that we must not talk on, and that's why I'm opposing it. We should be able to discuss any issue that benefits the community, and having this issue on the agenda in the future under another iteration maybe, as things change, we get more information, as grant opportunities come forward, whatever, we should be able to bring this issue up. To actually say, no, we can't talk about Plumbers Lane, no, we can't talk about Australia Day, no, we can't talk about Crescent Head Interchange. The list is growing, and it's growing against only a couple of us. And it's quite sad that you would think that shutting down democracy is an appropriate way to go.
I'm going to uphold the point of order this time, because I think that you've had enough on that, because you're not actually talking, you're just going around in circles. Thank you, Councillor Baxter. Then I'll take Councillor McGinn.
Speaking for the motion, and probably repeating myself for the third time, it's not so much, look, there's a $20 million truck stop being built at the Southern Interchange on the western side. $20 million investment. The businesses at the Southern Interchange are employing a lot of Kempsey people. So it's got nothing to do with I don't like.
You need point of order, Councillor.
What's the point of order?
The point of order is about the motion, whether we bring it back to council at any other time or not.
Madam Mayor, I'm speaking for the motion, for the foreshadowed motion as it stands now. On 2 points. This is not shutting down a councillor, for goodness sake. We have an operating plan, we have a process where we can input into the strategic direction of this council. For goodness sake, our operating plan is one of the items that we're to discuss today, with the financial plan backing it. That is our process for being able to influence the strategic direction of this council. We have a process. The process is not by notice of motion and bringing up options to council when we have an operating plan and a 4-year delivery plan. So we have a process in place that we are able to highlight and discuss
Point of
and
order, Madam Mayor.
workshop. That
The point of order, Madam Mayor. Could I address it, please, Councillor McGinn? You're actually saying that
You can't debate. Tell
No,
me
I'm
what
not.
the point of order is.
The point of order is Councillor McGinn is saying that notices of motion are not business of council.
Point of order. You cannot debate what she is saying. I want the point of order. Is she debating against the motion? Is she debating something that is incorrect?
She's 1D, making personal reflections on or imputes improper motives to any other councillor, and that's what
I
she's
don't
doing.
uphold it. Continue, Councillor.
I'm talking about process and the process of council, which we have a planning cycle, and we are all able to engage in that planning cycle. And we're actually in the middle of that planning cycle now, where we have spent some time and workshopped what our operating plan is to be for the next 12 months. And that is the time when, if we have a big idea or something comes to hand, to discuss that through the processes and workshops of council. So I'm suggesting we do have a process to influence the strategic direction. That is listening to the community, and that is working with our staff and with the other councillors to manage change and to influence change. The other thing is we do have a democracy here. We get to put up motions, recommendations. We get to do our darndest to make an influence in how that recommendation will be formed if we choose to do it by amendment or so on. We have a discussion about it, we listen to the debate, we form our opinions through the course of the debate, and we vote on it. And democracy is the majority working. This is democracy in action. We want an efficient operating organisation. When an item comes up that there is not an appetite for in council, that is not shutting someone down. That is not undemocratic. In fact, that is democracy in action.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Williams.
Madam Mayor, I can't believe we've just wasted 10 minutes on this. Can I put the motion, please?
I have a recommendation that the motion. There haven't been two speakers for or against. Do I have a speaker against? No. I'm going to put the there's no more speakers. Do you want the right of reply, Councillor? Thank you. I put the foreshadowed motion. All in favour of the foreshadowed motion. All against the foreshadowed motion. The foreshadowed motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. We now go back to 13. Have now started at the first item. Oops.
Move that way.
Councillor McGinn, seconded by Councillor Patterson. Do you wish to speak, Councillor?
Madam Mayor, really I think there's probably nothing to say, and yet this is such an important document that to just recommend it without some discussion or some comment would not do the justice in the huge amount of work that's gone into these documents. As I said before, we have a process in council. Council laws and staff have spent a lot of time on these documents. We're asking that they go out to the community on exhibition, and the community are able to input into these documents, make their comments before they're adopted. They're an amazing suite of documents. They also look really nice, so they're a pleasant document to read, which makes it easier, I think, to consume the document. So it is with great pleasure, I think, that all of us should be recommending that these go out on public exhibition as per the recommendation.
Councillor Saul.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just wanted to commend the staff on their actions for these plans. I've been here a number of years, and I must say this is one of the most outstanding ones to read and to collate with the public and the councillors. So just congratulations on what you've done, and I hope the community does appreciate your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Saul. And just before I go on, before I take Councillor Horville's question,
yeah, thank you.
I would just like to say a couple of things. I think consideration must be given to the reworking of our IPNR from the findings of the whole of the organisational review and our restructure. That was our focus 12 months ago. So the aim was to put us on the path of sustainability for the future and to make us deliver a high-performing council as we deliver the services for the community. The General Manager, his directors and the staff have worked professionally, hard to do this. And in the words of one of the community, and I know that the council has received this email, and this is from a community member that has not always seen eye to eye with council, but I am going to read it. Whole, great operating plan for 2019-20. It's easy to read and understand, and some great communication. Well done to all involved. It's not often that I think a council would get that sort of feedback. But I do want to actually acknowledge some people that are sitting in, our staff that are sitting in the room today. Firstly to Ron, thank you Ron, and Wayne, our acting CFO. I know Catherine's had a lot to do with this, I know Lyndall has, and I know our director Steve, who's on holidays, has, and our general manager and all the management team that we have sitting up here. In 12 months to have what we have now puts everything else, I think, into perspective. So I think, councillors, we do actually need to give that acknowledgement by a round of applause. Thank you. Now we'll take your question, Councillor Horville.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I commend your words. Yes, the staff, led by General Manager, have done an amazing job with these documents. A question on page 7 of the key considerations. At the third paragraph down, it says the 2019-20 financial year will see a delivery of a number of grant-funded projects across the Shire. Are are we required, Mr. General Manager, to factor in possible grants that come, or are we only dealing with what we already know?
In the operational plan, it's the grants that we know. We can't factor in grants we've submitted until we actually get notification and deeds and things are signed off. So yeah, we're only putting in there what we know at the time. In our thinking and planning processes, we have in the back of our mind that some of these others may come up. So we've got to be prepared to actually deal with those should they actually be successful.
And to deal with it financially, I presume you have a possibility of having to raise funds for such things which might be outside our income. Is that a possibility?
Yeah, with grants that we've submitted, and if they are requiring partial funding from council, we'd already have an idea that there's funding available with somewhere in the budget to actually match those fundings. Otherwise, there'd be matters that we'd actually deal with in our quarterly budget review process.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager. On page 8, I have a question too. It's just a basic, I don't have the knowledge, and it's obviously a financial thing. On page 8, 10 years works program, in the first line it says unit rates have been reviewed. What is a unit rate, please?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. It's a fairly simple measure. So a unit rate might be, it costs $10,000 per metre to resurface a road, or it's $2,000 a square metre to build a public amenities. So it's just those unit rates.
Okay, and that's how you budget for it. Thank you very much. The issue of Middleton Street, which is the second dot point there, it talks about looking at the one mob plan, or South Kempsey one community, one mob plan in 2019-20. The priority of this project will be reviewed. I fail, and maybe other councillors can see it, but I can't see the connection between a planning for South Kempsey and fixing all the infrastructure there that service the community, why you would defer roadworks that have been prioritised as essential.
Yes, Director Pearce. Director Fish.
Been a year. Through you, Madam Mayor. The South Kempsey plan actually identifies some actions, I guess, related to Middleton Street, and that is the reason why I guess we've highlighted that point, that any review of that plan may, I guess, change potentially the scope of some works associated with any project on Middleton Street or other streets in South Kempsey for that matter. So that's effectively why that point's raised there.
So, to be clear, Director Fish, you're saying that the Middleton Street may be reconfigured in where the road goes, whether there's alignments and so forth?
Through you, Madam Mayor, it would more relate to, I guess, the streetscape of that particular project. Within the South Kempsey plan at the moment, there is some improvements in that regard identified. And I guess we need to weigh up as to we can do a pavement rehabilitation project, or we can consider doing a more holistic job and I guess doing improving the road, but also improving the amenity and streetscape of that particular area.
Thank you, Director Fish. My final question is on page 9, if I may, and it talks about the regional road status, and the last sentence it reads, however, the long-term financial plan does include a scenario that aims to estimate the potential impact this change may have on the future financial forecast of council. So the scenario is that we will have a lot less costs with regional road extensions if in the next financial year the government implements the changes which they committed to at the election.
Yeah, what it is the state government have indicated they're going to take back the regional roads. What that would mean is they'd come off our books and the depreciation amount for those would actually have an impact. So we need to quantify that and then see where that actually leaves us in relation to our net operating result.
So at the moment, the regional roads we have, Mr. General Manager, we get a block grant, if my understanding is right, but the depreciation on that road, would it be more or less than the block grant that we get for that section of road?
I don't have those figures. Yeah, we have to come back to you on that and take that on notice.
So we could lose? Is that a possibility?
No, the two different things. The block grant's actually for the maintenance of those roads. The depreciation relates to the fact that we own those assets, and those assets have got to be on our balance sheet. So they're dealing with two different elements. And we don't know the scenario that the state government's going to do in terms of how they're going to maintain those roads should they take them back, whether they'll actually still ask councils to do it, whether they'll contract it out to the private sector, whether they'll do, we don't know.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, councillors. I put the recommend. Oh, sorry, councillor. Yes, we're voting.
Before you do.
Oh, sorry, General Manager.
Just before councillors do vote on that, and I appreciate the words from the Mayor and the other councillors, I would like to say publicly, though, the staff have worked enormously hard in actually pulling this together. The work pulling the finances, led by Wayne and Ron, and the managers meeting and working through the budget with their directors has been a huge amount of work to pull that together. Catherine and her team there in terms of a lot of the words around the document, Lyndall and the team there in terms of all the graphic design. But it has been a very collective effort that, again, and staff are going to shake their head in a minute, they know exactly what I'm going to say, we are better together as a team. It works, and this starts to produce it. And yeah, I really do want to thank and congratulate the team that actually pulled that together.
Thank you, General Manager. I think we do really have a mantra going here. It's a good one. I put the recommendation. All in favour of the recommendation, all against the recommendation. The recommendation has been carried. Thank you, councillors. Item 13.2, there is a recommendation. It is the Financial Sustainability Strategy. It's been moved by Councillor Patterson, seconded by Councillor Saul. Do I have any debate? No debate. I put the recommendation. All in favour of the recommendation, all against. That has been carried. And I think we will go to morning tea. Call to order, councillors. The meeting is about to resume. If you are in the room, it will be taken that you are prepared to vote. Item 13.3, Australia Day Awards Committee. There is a recommendation. Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor McGinn, seconded by Councillor Patterson. So, do you wish to speak, Councillor McGinn, or
We need to get some names.
we do? We're on page 16. With this,
Madam Mayor, I believe there's been a lot of work go into this by the staff, and I commend them for coming back with a way to move forward on the Australia Day Awards and Committee, and so I commend the motion.
we do have to address item number 4 and item number 5 if this goes through. I have no lights on, no discussion, no...
I'm happy to self-nominate for the...
We'll wait, do we wait till it goes through, General Manager, then do the... No,
do it now, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
I'm happy to self-nominate for the council representative to the Australia Day Awards.
Okay, and also for the 3 councillors? Are you self-nominating for that? Well, how about we just take...
Can't be the 3 though.
We'll just take number 4 first. Do I have any other nominations for that one? Councillor Horville, are you? Okay.
I think that's appropriate, Madam Mayor, because Councillor McGinn, as discussed before, is an OAM and she understands the process. I think that's highly appropriate that she's on that committee.
Okay, well, we'll vote on that now, so we'll get that out of the road. All in favour of Councillor McGinn? Thank you. So we have item number 5 we need to vote on as well.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to suggest that... Oh, you've got a sense of humour today. I would like to nominate the Deputy Mayor, whomever that might be at any point in time. Actually, the Deputy Mayor, so Ashley and Mark Baxter.
And we keep, and I'd just like to make the suggestion that the person, Councillor McGinn, who is is the representative of the Australia Day Awards, also be the other councillor.
Happy to accept that.
Okay, are you happy to accept that, Councillor Baxter? Yeah. Councillor Williams, do I have any others? So for the 3 on the panel, we'd have Councillor McGinn, Councillor Williams and Councillor Baxter. Okay, so we have a recommendation, we have our councillors nominated. Do I have any questions? I put the recommendation. All in favour of the recommendation? All against? That has been carried. Thank you, councillors. Item 13.4, Hathead Vacuum Sewerage.
Can we just clarify that voting for that last Australia Day Awards? Did everyone vote in favour of that? I didn't actually quite see. Yep, okay.
It was unanimous. I'm going too quick for everyone today. 13.4, page 19, Hathead Vacuum Sewerage System. There is a recommendation. Thank you, Councillor Saul. Seconded, Councillor Patterson. Do you wish to speak? Any debate?
Question, Madam Mayor.
Question from Councillor Horville.
I presume one of our officers here can answer this. Basically, this motion recommendation, correct me if I'm wrong, please, is saying that Hathead is full and we can't put any more subdivisions or houses out there with the present sewage system. Is that correct?
Yeah. Through you, Madam Mayor, there are some vacant lots, and what this is suggesting that those lots could only be developed to the equivalent of one ET, which essentially means that which is the equivalent to one dwelling on that particular lot. So it doesn't mean there can be no further development. It just means that we need to limit any further development on existing lots there to one ET.
Thank you.
I put the recommendation.
Madam Mayor, may I speak first? Very quickly.
Yes, Councillor.
Madam Mayor, at our catch-up at Hathead back in March, it was mentioned by many attending that they weren't very keen on seeing high-rise out there. Well, the way this report's read, that can't happen anyway. So they get their wish that their little village stays a village, and it's all down to sewerage.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Horval, you have a question, or I put the thank you.
No, Madam Mayor, I've asked the question.
All in favour of the recommendation? Aye. All against? Thank you.
ANZAC Day traffic control.
Madam Mayor, I'd like... Sorry.
I'll move it with an amendment if possible, Madam Mayor, or an addition.
I'm going to wait for Councillor. I'm not going to take that.
Thank you.
Doesn't really bother me. I'm pretty sure it was probably very similar. I'd like to move the amendment, add a point 2 that council in future use incorporate this in future operating plans.
Do you want an amount?
I don't think, because the amount may change.
I'll second that addition. Thank you. That was what I was going to do, Madam Mayor.
Councillors, what staff do, we'd actually start with that $7,000 in future operating budgets and review it each year as required in liaison with the sub-branches.
General Managers, does that wording give the right direction to you, or does it need some clarification?
Or not in future operating plans, in its operating plans. Incorporate this in future. Oh, yeah, that's appropriate funding. Yeah, to that effect, that'd be fine. Yep.
Councillor Horval? Councillor Williams?
I don't think there's much really to say, just that we need to, we have to fund this because we understand that it's a big financial burden on the subcommittees, and it's probably at risk of losing these events, and I don't think that's right. So it's a no-brainer for me.
I put the recommendation. All in favour of the recommendation? All against the recommendation? It's been carried. 15.2, amendment notification. Councillor Horval?
Yes, Madam Mayor. I'd like to amend it because having had discussions with a number of people, I'd like to make it clear. So my recommendation would be get rid of points 3 and 4 because it's not necessary unless I get advised otherwise. And point 1 would read that Council amends its customer service and public notification policy by adding to point 5, all adjoining property owners will be notified in writing of potential developments that require public notification. And that's the only addition. I'm making it clearer that from the information given in the General Manager's comment, and on page, so just explaining my amendment if I could, Madam Mayor, at the bottom of page 50, there's already public notification areas that require public notification, and as I was talking about earlier, we should notify the adjoining landowners. So that goes with those public notifications that we also sent a letter as well to the adjoining landowners. So that's the change, Madam Mayor.
Excuse me, General Manager. Oh, Madam Mayor, sorry.
Yeah.
I'll be able to ask a question. to the General Manager, Madam Mayor. It's in relation to this
Can you ask?
potential developments. I mean, are we talking?
We should have a seconder before
I'll
we...
second that.
Thank you, councillor.
My question about potential developments could be anything. How could we have something that says of potential developments? What is the potential?
Madam Mayor, our reading of that and our understanding would be if council actually receives a DA, it's in the context of a particular policy about development applications. So that's the development application is about a potential development. So it's in that context that if we receive a development application, then this is the process we go through for public notification.
Thank you.
Could I speak to the motion, Madam Mayor?
Yes, councillor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, as I've found out from asking some questions earlier, there's a policy that council staff follow, and this is amending that policy to give surety to adjoining landowners whenever there's a development that requires public notification. At the moment, and this came about from last month when we approved a development in Prior Circuit, and when I asked the question, the neighbours weren't notified, even though the notification had been followed, the policy had been followed, putting it on public notification via the Argus and on the council website. But those two adjoining neighbours were not told about it. Maybe the owners actually went and chatted to them, that's possible, but just to formalise it, we should, as council, saying to them, we've received a development application for your adjoining property, you can come and view them at council and make a submission if you wish. That's the sort of letter that would go out. And so it's a form letter. It's just a matter of looking at the 6 mapping tool that council staff use and saying, here are the neighbours, what are their addresses, send the letter. It's not a great cost, in my opinion, and it's just a straightforward getting to those people that don't have the internet and don't buy the Argus, and it's just formalising the procedure. So that's why I suggest this be supported. I thank you, and very quickly, Madam Mayor, may I ask the General Manager a question about it, please?
Yes, certainly.
In your recommendation, Mr. General Manager, you talk about a significant expense. This policy of sending a letter to and adjoining ones of potential development that need notification, would that be a great cost, and are you able to quantify it at all?
Through Madam Mayor, I wouldn't be able to quantify it here, but what you're dealing with is the need for staff to actually produce those letters, and yes, they can be form letters, but the details still need to be completed in those. We have to undertake the research to find out who the neighbours are adjoining, both on obviously to the left and right and behind those areas. We then have to, and it sounds pretty mundane, but those letters have to be printed, folded up, put in envelopes, posted. Any comments come back. So there is a time, and when you start to do that hundreds of times a year, then there is a cost involved in the staff time in actually doing that. The state government have parameters around when areas and potential developments are to be notified, which is what council currently follow, and our development and compliance unit are actually developing, as highlighted here, a guidance note to actually assist staff to better clarify when those applications do need to go to adjoining neighbours as well.
Councillor McGinn.
Madam Mayor, thank you. I'm just not sure what the perceived gap is, although I certainly recognise that at times it might, you know, the issue that you raise about Prior Circuit does seem as if it would be a simple solution. My problem is with policy on the run, and whilst it doesn't seem a bad idea that maybe 2 neighbours should be notified with a subdivision, when the policy is then put more broadly across every DA, across the Shire, I just wonder if trying to come up with a solution to perhaps this event is policy on the run, and that in fact can create more issues than it in fact is intended to solve more simply. And I wonder too, would such a policy mean every time there was a garage which is completely contained within a property? Anyway, I'm not quite sure what the perceived gap is.
I think the comments are similar to what we've just made, that the state government actually have broad parameters that they've worked out that really deal with notification on a consistent basis statewide, and that's what we try and follow. We are undertaking that review at the moment to develop the a better clarification for staff when it comes to overshadowing and things like that, which may see more items get notified to adjoining neighbours, but there is that broad parameters provided by the state government and the existing policy.
This goes beyond those broad parameters.
It becomes, if council were to adopt it, it becomes something we would do on all that full range of development, whether there was any real impact or not. We can understand it, and hence the note that we're developing for the staff in relation to overshadowing or noise impact or other things like that. I mean, there's a range of developments where that wouldn't be required, so we're trying to get the right balance.
Yeah.
I'll take Councillor Saul and Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, I support in principle this idea because council's caught in a hard spot. If we're not advising people of our notifications, they get their backs up. Of course, as the GM mentioned, we're following procedures from state government and our own policy. The point is cost. Is it possible perhaps we could actually add a small cost on to the price of the DA to cover this? That may be the way forward. At least then we are ensuring our residents are informed of potential developments to make sure that everyone has the chance to respond if they wish to, and makes it a bit more transparent. So it isn't easy, but the thing is we must make sure people are notified so that they can't be accused of not being supportive.
Just before you go, Councillor Baxter, the Director would like to say something.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. Just in relation to Councillor Saul's point just made relating to costs, there are certainly quite a number of costs that are legislated to us, so we have limited capacity in some instances to amend those, or have no ability. The other thing I just wanted to raise was at the end of the General Manager's comment, there's, I guess, several scenarios there listed as to when we would do public notification or to provide you some guidance. When those scenarios occur, we would actually notify the immediate adjoining neighbours at least, and obviously since that prior circuit development that you considered last month, we have reviewed that in terms of the LEP variations, and we would actually notify the adjoining neighbours where an LEP variation is occurring. So I guess what is in the recommendation there is effectively what we will do anyway.
Councillor.
Yes, so in all those points there, yes, it would be the case. The LEP one, we've just obviously reconsidered that following the prior circuit, and where an LEP variation occurs, we will notify the adjoining neighbours.
Just before we go on, I just need some clarification here. From what the General Manager said, we have a policy that's in line with the state government's policies, but we're also reviewing what we now do and have it more targeted to the individual. Is that correct? Is that how it should? Yeah,
we're developing a guidance note which actually helps the staff interpret the legislation in a way that they can actually apply it to specific circumstances. Yeah, and Council's policy.
Okay. I'll take Councillor Baxter and then I'll take Councillor Patterson.
Yeah, exactly. Just a question probably to Director Fish. I was under the impression, going back in time, that a person putting forward a DA, he has to notify his neighbours.
No, that's not correct.
Not correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I suppose this question could be through to the General Manager or Director Fish, just about the notification policy. Will this be looked at in the efficiency policy that we passed today? In like Councillor Saw was asking about the cost of advertising and stuff. Like there's been quite an increase in advertising costs in the local newspaper. I'm just wondering if we could look at these costs through efficiencies, and maybe the actual advertising will not be a postal thing, or I don't think we've looked at the parameters that this could be. I think we're trying to move out of, you know, we've got a climate policy that we're going to work on soon, and it will obviously have in it, you know, a non-paper sort of move in office work, you know. So I really think that this is something that that could be covered in work that we're already doing, like when we get feedback from you guys. Like in relation to cost and how we deliver this.
Thank you, Councillor. You want an answer? A comment?
The Argus probably argue that their take of our advertising budget hasn't increased. I think it's actually decreased, but they still come to our meetings, and Ruby still puts up with listening to all of us talk. But
She's a trooper.
She is. Council staff, we're always looking at ways to decrease costs, obviously, to the ratepayers. When it comes to notification, one of the things we're actually looking at with our new finance system is where we can is getting more and more people to do rates notices via email, for example. If we have people saying they are happy to get correspondence via email, and over time that will build up, but we still won't have everyone, so there will always be cases where we have to mail out information, and in this case, you know, down the road we may be able to send some of these notifications via email, but others would still need to be posted.
I mean, they could be sent out with the rates notices, etc., I suppose. But
this sort of notification couldn't be sent out with it's time specific and proposal specific, so it would go specifically at that time. So yeah. Yeah, but we meet once a year and look at policies.
We've just done policy.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get the time frame of it. When we look at,
every couple of years we review all the policies.
So this,
but what should be happening is what's happening here. There's an issue came up at our last meeting about what's the name of the street?
Prior.
Yeah, Mendel Blank Prior, and staff have immediately reviewed what we're currently doing based on that. So that's that ongoing improvement that we're continuing to do. So that's being reflected already in the note that the staff have provided. It actually shows quite clearly that we've responded, and any LEP variations we will be notifying to adjoining owners.
So it is happening already.
That's correct, based on what we actually, on the ongoing review of policy. If issues come up through council or other areas, we continually review those policies.
Yep. Thank you.
Councillor Williams, then Councillor McGinn.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The General Manager actually just said what I was going to say. Obviously, it was reactionary that this particular one come from the prior circuit debacle. I wouldn't say debacle, but well, people didn't get notified, and they probably believe they should have. So, and it hasn't. It's been many years that's been happening. So, I just say well done to the staff, because they've obviously identified it, and they're onto it. So, I probably won't support this because I know it's already being done.
Thank you. Councillor McGinn, or are we ready?
Well, that was essentially, I was asking the same question, I guess, and that is, does passing this nomination actually change anything? I think it sounds like the matter is already at hand.
Okay, I'll ask Councillor Hawkell if you'd like to close debate.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I remember asking the question last time, and staff then became aware that the local, the adjoining neighbours hadn't been notified, and what this does is put it in our policy. We have a policy of notifications for significant interest, but this motion will actually require council to do that. What we now know they're already doing, but it's something that should be done. If I could just correct make sure that everyone understands this, because Councillor McGinn kind of got it a little bit wrong. She said this will require every DA. No, it doesn't. It only requires those limited numbers that are on page 50, KLEP variations, two-storey dwellings, multi-storey dwellings, 3 or more dwellings, residential flat buildings, shop-top housing, dual occupancies, commercial development in residential areas, tourist and visitor accommodation. So they aren't a great number per year. There's more DAs that come in for sheds and single-storey residences and garage and driveways and those sorts of things, which will not need notification, but these ones will. So what we're doing is just adding to what's already in the notification policy and formalising it. And that's how we should operate as council, in my opinion. We formalise what council staff will do, and I applaud the fact that the staff have already taken it on board, but I think it still should be in the policy that we can decide on as councillors. I commend you to vote for this.
I'm going to put the recommendation. All in favour of the recommendation? All against? The notice of motion's been lost. We now go on to questions. Just before we, yes, we're just going on to Councillor Questions. Councillor Saul.
Madam Mayor, I just had a chap approach me yesterday. He was concerned about the 6-tonne limit on the railway bridge at Spooners Avenue. Has that been looked at? The concern was in cattle trucks and such may be overloaded during emergencies and such. Is that railway bridge sufficient for flood events, I suppose we put, or?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just have two questions. One, and this one might not even need to be written down. Sorry, is the removal of the teddy bears at the Southern Interchange. Yeah.
Yeah. We've all become attached.
Not only they here, one has actually been removed. I haven't seen the white one, whether it's still there or not.
Still there. One's still there.
The ones at the Thrumster roundabout in Port, I think, are still there. But they also had a whole heap of them tied up at the Town Green in Port Macquarie as well. So someone's been having a bit of fun. I was out there last week with our park staff, and at some point we will remove them. But they're certainly a bit of a talking point at the moment.
Yeah. And one last question, thank you. Where is or is Spooners Avenue on the road sealing program? Yes, yeah. Cullen to Chaina Ponds.
No questions.
I live on a sealed part, so it's not really an interest.
With reference to the answers to questions on notice, QFN M3 and QON N6 in the April agenda, and in the fact that no reports of any type have been presented by the Australian International Aviation College to Council, which is non-compliant with sections 26 and 29 of the agreement signed by Council and AIAC on the 16th of July 2018, were AIAC informed that they did not have to comply with these sections of the agreement, and if so, when?
Just for the public record, I'll actually respond to that as we're actually still on camera, and we'll provide a written response in the next paper as usual. Council has had discussions with them. One of the key parts of that is in relation to the reports on their flying. We actually use AvData for that, which is a totally independent third party, and as per the appropriate clause in the agreement, Council, we can use our discretion on those areas, and it's far more accurate for us to have an independent third party tell us when the planes are flying than have it self-reported by an operator.
No more questions. Thank you, councillors. Councillor McGinn.
Second that.
Seconded Councillor Patterson. All in favour?
Aye.
We are now going into confidential. We will close the chambers. Thank you, Ruby.